So in our reading today, we're thinking about darkness and light. Judas Iscariot was one of the 12 disciples. He went to the chief priests and asked, "How much will you give me if I help you arrest Jesus?" They paid Judas 30 silver coins, and from then he started looking for a good reason to betray Jesus. And it was night. Jesus went to his disciples to a place called Gethsemane. When they got there, he told them, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." Jesus took along Peter and the two brothers, James and John. He was very sad and troubled, and he said to them, "I am so sad that I feel as I am dying. Stay here and keep awake with me." Jesus walked on a little way. Then he knelt with his face to the ground and prayed, "My Father, if it is possible, don't make me suffer by having me drink from this cup, but do what you want, not what I want." A second and third time he went away and came back again and found them sleeping. They simply could not keep their eyes open. Finally he returned and said, "Are you still sleeping? The time has come for the Son of Man to be handed over to sinners. Get up, let's go. The one who will betray me is already here." And it was night. Jesus was still speaking when Judas the betrayer came up. He was one of the 12 disciples, and a large mob armed with swords and clubs was with him. They'd been sent by the chief priests and the nation's leaders. Judas had told them ahead of time, "Arrest the man I greet with a kiss." Jesus replied. Judas walked up to Jesus and said, "Hello, teacher." Then he kissed him. Jesus replied, "My friend, why are you here?" The men grabbed Jesus and arrested him. One of Jesus' followers pulled out a sword. He struck the high priest's servant and cut off his ear. But Jesus told them, "Put your sword away. Anyone who lives by fighting will die by fighting. Don't you know that I could ask my Father, and right away he would send me more than 12 armies of angels? But then how could the words of the scriptures come true, which say that this must happen?" Jesus said to the mob, "Why did you come with swords and clubs to arrest me like a criminal? Day after day I sat and taught in the temple, and you did not arrest me. But all this happened so that when the prophets wrote would come true." Then all of Jesus' disciples left him and ran away. And it was night. While Peter was sitting out in the courtyard, a servant girl came up to him and said, "You were there with Jesus from Galilee." But in front of everyone, Peter said, "That isn't so. I don't know what you are talking about." When Peter had got out of the gate, another servant girl saw him and said to some people there, "This man also was with Jesus of Nazareth." Again, Peter denied it. "I didn't even know that man," he swore. A little while later, some people standing there walked over to Peter and said, "We know that you are one of them. We can tell it because you talk like someone from Galilee." Peter began to curse and swear, "I don't know that man." Right then, a rooster crowed, and Jesus remembered that Jesus had said, "Before a rooster crows, you will say 3 times that you don't know me." Then Peter went out and cried hard. And it was night. During Passover, the governor always freed a prisoner chosen by the people. At that time, a well-known terrorist named Jesus Barabbas was in jail. So when the crowd came together, Pilate asked them, "Which prisoner do you want me to set free? Do you want Jesus Barabbas or Jesus, who is called the Messiah?" Pilate knew that the leaders had brought Jesus to him because they were jealous. While Pilate was judging the case, his wife sent a message. It said, "Don't have anything to do with that innocent man. I've had nightmares because of him." But the chief priests and the leaders convinced the crowd to ask for Barabbas to be set free and for Jesus to be killed. Pilate asked again the crowd, "Which of these two men do you want me to set free?" "Barabbas," they replied. "What am I to do with Jesus, who is called the Messiah?" They all yelled, "Crucify him." Pilate answered, "But what crime has he done?" But they yelled even louder, "Crucify him." And it was night. Pilate saw that there was nothing he could do and that the people were starting to riot. So he took some water and washed his hands in front of them and said, "I won't have anything to do with killing this man. You are the ones who are doing it." Everyone answered, "We and our families will take the blame for his death." So Pilate set Barabbas free. Then he ordered his soldiers to beat Jesus with a whip and nail him to a cross. The troops then stripped off Jesus' clothes and put a scarlet robe on him. They made a crown out of thorn branches and placed it on his head and put a stick in his right hand. They knelt down and pretended to worship him. "Hail, King of the Jews," they said. They spat on him and took the stick from him and beat him. When they'd finished making fun of him, they took off his robe and put his own clothes back on his back and led him to be nailed on a cross. And it was night. On the way they met a man from Cyrene named Simon, and they forced him to carry Jesus' cross. They came to a place named Golgotha, which means place of a skull. There they gave Jesus some wine mixed with a drug to ease the pain. But when Jesus tasted what it was, he refused to drink it. The soldiers nailed Jesus to a cross and gambled to see who would get his clothes. Then they sat down to guard him. Above his head they put a sign that told while he was nailed there. It read, "This is Jesus, King of the Jews." And it was night. The soldiers also nailed two criminals on crosses, one to the right of Jesus and the other to the left. People who passed by said terrible things. They shook their heads and shouted, "So you're the one who claimed he could tear down the temple and build it again in 3 days. If you are God's son, save yourselves and come down from the cross." At noon, the sky turned dark and stayed there until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Then at that time, Jesus shouted out, "Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani," which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Some of the people standing there heard Jesus and said, "He's calling for Elijah." One of them ran and grabbed a sponge. He soaked it in wine and put it on a stick and held it to Jesus. Others said, "Wait, let's see if Elijah will come and save him." Once again, Jesus shouted out, and then he died. And it was night. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. From the very beginning, the Word was with God. And with this Word, God created all things. Nothing was made without him. And everything that was created received its life from him. And his light gave life to everyone. The light keeps shining in the dark, and darkness has never put it out. The true light that shines on everyone was coming into the world. The Word was in the world, but no one knew him, though God had made the world through his Word. He came unto his own, but his own did not welcome him. And it was dark. So may Jesus Christ, who for our sakes became obedient unto death, even death on a cross, keep us and strengthen us this day and forevermore. Amen.